We're going to slide into Sid's area, which is communications. So, Sid, if you would like to take it away.
Hello, yeah, and I had a note to talk about the big idea, so thanks, Bob, for doing that.
Thanks, Arnie.
Um,
Bye.
uh, for those that don't know me, I'm Sid Brown, current president of the Boise Cordsmen till January, and then also, for some reason, I was asked to be the Evergreen District Communications Director. I am typically known as a man of few words, so I was kind of befuddled by that. But um, as you've heard from every session so far, from the initial one, Bill talked a lot about it with communications. It's a part of every aspect of our lives. It's a part of every aspect of our barbershop lives. We communicate with BHS. We communicate with chapters, districts. Your family communicates, or hopefully they communicate. You communicate with your dog, right? Um, we communicate. And that there's the old Cool Hand Luke saying, well, I guess it was his taskmaster saying, what we have here is a failure to communicate. And then there's also the old saying, 10% never get the word. It's we have all this technology, and we still can be challenged by communicating. And there's just because people are involved, and we know people aren't perfect. At the district level, 6 people help out with this. I help. They do all the work. I think get the credit for what they do. I don't really do much. Marketing obviously is Greg, and he's also our Zoom. He keeps us track of a lot of things. We have a website that Judy keeps track of. She's very involved with Chapter Leader News. We have a Facebook and a YouTube channel that Duncan Gilman runs. He will be moving to the board as a board member at large. So we are looking for somebody that's comfortable in that environment. If you have anybody, let Greg know. He might already have somebody, I'm not sure, but if you do, let him know. We also have the Timber that comes out quarterly with Bob Robson and Doug Gardner helping out from Calgary Foothills. And then Green Sheet with David Dobson and Laura Cunningham. Sorry, Laura Pennington from Star Harmony, and she will be taking over as David Dobson moves on to Bob's team, helping out with some other things. So again, we'll kind of need an assistant green sheet editor. Laura is in Star Harmony, so in our minds, talking to her, if there's somebody in the I-5 corridor that you have that probably makes sense to have somebody help out, just because there's a lot more going on over there. You guys, I think the chapters talk a lot more than Boise does with all the other chapters other than Star Harmony. So if you have anybody for that, again, let Greg know. But again, with all these things we're currently using, we don't have 100% coverage. It's just like Bill talked about. Not everybody attends convention. Not everybody opens up the green sheet, the timber, and not everybody goes to the different social media things. So how do you tackle that? Because I'm sure that's the same with your chapters and with other things in your life. How do you really do that? And I just kind of want to have a little bit of interaction first. What are you guys currently doing with your chapters? Just a couple of people. Are you guys using Discord? There's Slack. There's some of these other ones. Of course, email. There's so many options, but which one works best?
We use Slack for PDX Voices and Vocal Summit.
And yeah, is it pretty effective? You get with getting the word out?
I think so, especially since both of our ensembles are on Slack. We also have a separate workspace for our chapter board. But since everybody is familiar with Slack, it's really easy to cross channels between the two different workspaces and keep things specific within the channel so that it doesn't get too muddy. It does take some training. It is fairly user friendly and intuitive, but at the end of the day, everything requires a little bit of training just to make sure that it's, being utilized in the best, most effective way. But
Yeah.
That's what we've been using.
Cool. And then Bob put Groupanizer there. In Boise, we use Discord. We're still using email, but so we're doing both. But we're trying to get away from emails because you know how emails, if you're not checking out all weekend, that message is potentially buried with all the trash you get or just other important emails. So we really want to get away from emails. So those messages are just like in Discord or whatever app you happen to be using. It's just that or that topic. And so it's change management, getting people used to that new technology. And kind of like Katie talked about, there might be some training that needs to happen. And but it doesn't have to be super techy. There might be some guys you have to print out a thing for them and give it to them at rehearsal. We had a guy that he was a bass. He finally got a better. He had a flip phone. Let's just say it that way. He finally got better technology, but before somebody had to save all the learning tracks to a CD and give it to him. So there's things that you might have to do like that, depending on, again, who you have. But there's also really two types of communications, right? There's internal communications and external, completely different audiences. Early on, I guess it was this year, around February timeframe, Greg and I and Judy met with, we were hoping it would be more, but it was still worth our time. We met with a few younger, newer members in society, the society, to kind of see what was going on, how they came to barbershop, what were they. I think I know it's been talked about, we need to be authentic with them and stuff like that. And everybody wants to recruit younger members. So we kind of like, well, what drew them here in the first place? And there was a couple of really just two comments I would highlight from what they had to say. And then Greg, you can add more if I forget something important. But one is you have to be authentic. They can smell insincerity a mile away. They get so much pandering and so much on social media in advertisements. They can smell through BS like that. They can just tell if you're sincere. And so you have to be sincere with them. And also, interestingly, they all came from a musical background in their family, whether it was band, they played the piano, or they sang. It doesn't have to be in church, but that could be a part of it. They all had a musical experience, so they just understood it and they appreciate it. They appreciate music. And somebody mentioned earlier, your chorus, I think Bob mentioned it, your chorus needs to be singing well if you're going to go try to be involved in a high school or something like that. So it's so they appreciate that. And then when they're ringing chords, they just get it. And interestingly, in the Boise chapter, we have a member spotlight every rehearsal. One guy gets up and answers a few standard questions about themselves and their background. And to a man, so far, every one of them came from a musical family in their background. Again, maybe they appreciated musicals, maybe they're in plays, just different things. Some of them were in high school choir, church choir. They all have some musical experience in their background. I'm not saying that's everybody, but to me, that's the target audience, because that's who seems to be coming. And I bet if you looked around your chapters, you'd find that very similar thing. So that's something to think about. And so, where do those, well, we'll get to that with external communications. But one thing I think, just like your monthly, yearly budget, you need to do that with your calendar as well. Plan ahead. You should have next year's Christmas show on the list and the timelines. Here's our target date, and then the events backed up. What do we need to do by November? What do we need to do by July for our Christmas show? Just things like that. District, what do we need to do? Or if you host a youth festival, and I hope more of you do, what do you have to do? You have to secure clinicians, you have to get to schools, and that's all done a year ahead of time. So there's things, whatever the event is, it's really plan ahead and then communicating that and those expectations to your members. Because I would say they need to know what's happening, so they want to be involved. Kind of like if you build it, they will come. And I think Katie had mentioned about how people want to be involved in something. And when we started singing after COVID, we were just singing for a couple months, and there was no planned events. And a couple people weren't coming, or they came and then they stopped coming for a little bit. So we were down to quite a few members. But once we scheduled our next show, people started coming back because they had something to work towards, and that was very important. So, but again, communicating those things as well, whether it's on a website, again, however you communicate with people. What are your current challenges in your chapter communicating? What are some of the things you see in getting the word out, if there is any? Yes, Scott.
One of the things that seems to happen on a regular basis is when we're communicating out, we keep communicating to the same group of people. It may be a couple hundred people on our email list that we've collected over the years. So one of the challenges we have is how do we get to different Facebook people, get to different, how do we bring in new people as opposed to just reaching the same audience?
Yeah,
and that's one of the things
external communications.
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about that. I don't know if I have a silver bullet for you, and I guess I meant to say that there is no cookie cutter or silver bullet to communications, because here we are in all this technology, and again, in so many ways, so many options to communicate, and we still have a hard time. Even if you look in disaster areas, Paradise, California, during the campfire, they couldn't communicate with people to get the message for them to evacuate. It happened in Maui as well. Communication, even in disaster. So it's just it's a really tough thing. But some of the challenge, is the average age. What are my skills, or what communication do I use versus a 20-year-old that somebody talked about? There's just so many differences to use. But some of the things I think, and this could apply internally and externally too, is you got to make it interesting. And well, we talked about being authentic, but also applicable. Christmas shows easy. Oh, I want to go hear Christmas songs. That's great. So that's interesting, and that's timely. Let's see. But also don't try to do it by yourself. I don't know. I think we have a lot of presidents here probably, but just empower others. And because when I was asked to be the communications director, I didn't really know what the expectations were. But once I talked to the people currently doing it, all I had to do was empower them. I didn't have to tell them what to do. Every now and then they needed a budget, for example. I needed to present that to the board. They needed, sometimes I had to approve a message or something, and I would get with Bill or Don or whatever needed done. And so there was some of that, but it's really just empowering people as well, people skilled. Like maybe the person doing your Facebook page is not the same person communicating, your course manager, stuff like that. It might not be the same person. So what are they capable of, and who's willing to do it? And also, if you're a leader specifically, provide them information to share. Again, you have your calendar and all that entails, but let them know. And also reminders. How many of you get your appointment reminders from a doctor or whatever about 3 days before now? Sometimes the day before. I get, you get those text messages and emails. It's because people forget. So the more you can remind people about things, even before every rehearsal, Rich Lapp tries to send out a chorus plan, or Zach will, kind of what's going on. It's kind of a refresher. Hey, make sure you bring this music, and here's what's going on. So it's those timely reminders for people. And again, some of these apply to external, your people you're trying to recruit, or either as singers or as just audience members as well. So it's kind of, they can apply to all that. But one of the common themes is it needs to be a familiar and trusted messenger. So if I was going to use that Paradise, California, the county sheriff is going to be a trusted messenger versus maybe some other government agencies. A lot of times the government is mistrusted, and I'm just using an extreme example, or whatever the local news source is it respected and trusted? If it's, maybe that faith group in that area, things like that. Who's your trusted messengers? In our case, I think it would be choir directors, other choir directors, definitely high school if we're talking about youth festival stuff. Trusted, but somebody that makes sense to be that trusted messenger, and again, not pandering, not just being insincere about things and expecting, oh, here's my message and this is going to work. I meant to say this earlier. When we first started talking as communications teams earlier this year, there was this initial talk of, what's available from society. And as Greg and I have met with other districts on a few Zoom calls, and I can't remember if there was a society person on any of those, but I would say
there wasn't.
Yeah, there's not much available out there. And I also say Evergreen is ahead from the ones that we met with in our efforts. So we're doing a great job, and I know Bob Cox is going to take us even further ahead in chapter development. So that's huge. But also, being in Idaho, we're kind of flyover country, so we always say we don't want an East Coast solution to things. And so there's that. What fits your culture. Even Bob talked about that a little bit ago. What's the, are you in a kind of a retirement community? Are you in a, what makes sense for that? Because it's not going to be the same when you're communicating. But when you're talking to your chorus specific, it needs to be clear, actionable info. I can't tell you how many times we have to tell them what they're supposed to wear for a show or something. It's like, it's really only two choices for us. It's either a suit or it's our black pants and our white chorus. It's really simple, but people just get confused. And so we always have to constantly tell them. And I believe Greg talked about a little bit ago about you have to repeat that message. And you would think it'd be easy, but it's even some of the most simple things you have to tell them.
We did discover with the young folks that we did, they don't like to be called young folks.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They don't.
So they are now new participants, NPs, but they hate scrolling. So most newsletters come out and you're on your phone and you have to do an incredible amount of scrolling, and they don't like it and they won't take much time to look at it. And most of both the people that were there all said that they get their information from their chapter leaders. Mm-hmm. So if the chapter leaders forget to tell them, they don't know anything about it. They don't know what to expect at a convention, and they look at the price. And if the chapter has not done a good job of internally messaging to them that this is a good thing to do and our chapter wants to do it, blah, 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 they will just ignore it. So we learned an awful lot. And I wanted one other thing, Sid. Musical background that you brought up. Paul Ellinger has a formula, which I've modified slightly. But 70% of people that join chapters have been personally invited. 70%. 29.5%, I'm hoping I'm doing my math right, 29.5% have some relationship to music altogether. Or they had someone that sang it when they were, an uncle that sang it, or their dad sang it, or their mom sang it, or whatever. So 29% come in because they're already familiar with the material. And 0.5% come in from your social marketing. So, and that should add up to 100 if I did that right. But that's those are astounding statistics to deal with, and that's why I say the secret sauce is going out and performing someplace where people are passing by and watch their reaction.
Yep. Yeah. We're not the Shriners or the should say the Masons where we're hidden in a building somewhere and everything's a secret. We're an open society and we want to have our face out there. And I think that's the answer is just be out there and as much as you can, whether it's a fair or if you can sing at a school or whatever, the more you can sing, the better. I believe Greg said the Harmony Kings sing once a month. It's twice a month they sing.
Harmony Kings is booked from now until September 2024 with 2 performances a month.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I bet that's probably the busiest chorus out there. That's a lot of work. And again, your target audience, as far as when you're trying to message them, I'm certainly not a marketing or communications expert, but I know what I like. I'm sure if we all went to our cars though, we'd have a different radio station playing different types of music, and other than barbershop, of course. But I know people are different, so you got to tailor things to where they're at.
Yeah, and kind of along those lines too, it's one thing that we've talked about in our chapter down here in Portland is kind of the platinum rule, which kind of trumps the golden rule of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The platinum rule being do unto others as they would have you do unto them. It's because the way that Sid you might like to be talked to is not the way that I would like to be talked to, or Bob or Greg or vice versa. But if you can dial in on how the people, when we're talking about internal communications, trying to get information to our members about things that are important to our membership, if you can figure out how your membership prefers to receive information, and you might have 2 or 3 different trends. You may have people that only want to receive it via email, only want to receive it through a text message, people who only want to get it through Slack or Groupanizer. And once you kind of figure that out, then you can really dial up the ways that you communicate through those specific channels. Because if you're sending your email only people to Slack, they're never going to get the information. If you're sending your Slack only people to email, again, they're never going to get the information. So if you can speak to your members in the method that they prefer to be spoken to, you're going to receive a lot higher levels of engagement that way.
Yeah, in Harmony Kings, we put most everything on a website, on a members only website page, where we put most of the information. But we had some who were really, really challenged to even get to a website, let alone remember the password to get into the members only. So we duplicated it with, so the same message that went online came out on paper, and we handed it out to those individuals. In reality, we only ended up probably actually using ink for about 6 people. But it's really important, exactly what you're saying, Kate. You meet them where they are. You know, what is their preferred thing? And somebody asked on the chat bar if there's tools that combine all 3. I don't know. Has anybody run across that?
I believe that Groupanizer or the Choir Genius has ways that you can kind of hit all 3 in a pretty easy method. I know that with our Slack workspace, there are notification settings that each individual user can set up to their preference. So if you put something on Slack, Scott, so like if Scott went in on Slack and just posted a message, then Bob might have it set up where he gets a pop-up notification on his phone, which then alerts him to check Slack. Or maybe Bob receives an email saying like, hey, a new message was posted on Slack. You need to go check that. So that could be a way to hit your text people and your email people. It's still directing them back to Slack to check the information, but that at least alerts them to the fact that there is new information that's important to them.
That is available on Groupanizer too.
Yeah. Pride of Portland, staying with them for a while, they used Choir Genius, which I believe is also Groupanizer.
It's Groupanizer.
Or it's
yeah,
very
same
similar.
thing.
Yeah.
And Constant Contact now has a SMS text thing where you send a text with a link. So it just says new information from EVG, and it gives you the link and it takes you directly to the document.
The other thing that I would encourage too is that if your chapter doesn't have some type of newsletter that goes out to your members, that's just another great way to share information and make sure that it gets out. A lot of the times and things that, you know, as I go around and teaching schools and leadership stuff also, is that it may not go to your member may not be who that needs to go to. It may need to go to the significant other that's in the house who will read it, who manages the calendar and those types of things too. And one of the things I just posted on there also is that, you know, there are a lot of tools, and this answers kind of your question, Scott, is that where can we go to get more information or to get our story out? In Facebook, there's all kinds of special groups that you can set up with invites into the groups that you want people to come into. The use of Nextdoor and Neighbor are great things around your local area. Other social media, I use, I just lost the name of it. What's the one with the doorbell? Ding dong, somebody's at your front door. What is that?
Avon.
Ring.
Ring. It's the Ring video app.
There you go. Ring, I can set up my neighbors to get messages while I'm out also. And it's, you know, that for the people, my immediate neighbors, they know when my shows are, they know when all my activities are, they know when I'm having a social activity at the house because we've got people coming over and they're parking on the street. There's just all kinds of other little tools that are out there. And I'm going to publicize that. You know, Kathy Shield, who is the director of the Oregon Spirit Sweet Adelines Chorus, was recognized by their barbershop or by the Sweet Adelines organization for their membership growth over this past year. And she has 3 or 4 different programs that are available. What I'll do is I will get that information and I will post that out to y'all. She's opened it up to anybody that wants information on how to use that and some of the tools that she uses. So again, opportunities are available and things that are out there. As Katie said, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to know how to get it to roll down the road in the right direction.
And the other thing to keep in mind too is that you can't give your information often enough. If you, it takes 7 times before someone makes the firm decision, 3 times to make a decision, yes, no, or maybe. Then sometime within the next 4, they will decide whether they want to participate in it or not. Talking to your chapter on a regular basis. We did away with business meetings during chapter meetings. We went to announcements, and we took exactly 8 minutes of our thing to give announcements, and then we backed it up with paper, and they still would come up and say, "Did you say?"
Did you?
And the answer is yes. I said that. Let me say it again, because you can't tell it too much. I worked for a racetrack for 16 years. It had been out there since 1967. In 1999, we had people walk in going, "I never knew there was a racetrack here."
True.
And the promoter was spending $5,000 a week during the season advertising the place, and they didn't know. When you're sick of it, everybody else is just now starting to get it. So if you've got a show coming up, you should be talking about the show 3 months before you get there, because it's going to take that long to permeate from the frontal lobes to the backal lobes.
Scott, you had a question?
Yeah, just a comment. It'd be really great for a bunch of the different chapters, I think, is that I don't know if this is useful, but it seems like it would be to have somebody actually with a technology center at some of the events that are district wide. And if somebody wants to take a session and actually not learn about Slack or some of these other products, or Neighbor, but actually have somebody sit with them and set them up with Neighbor and Nextdoor and Facebook, and finding the groups in their area and finding ways to help them start the process to get down the road and learning how to use the tools and stuff. I think that'd be really cool. I'm not sure if people would take advantage of it, but it seems
Are you creating Harmony College Northwest classes right now?
I'm requesting
on accounting.
That also goes back to what we've been talking about, is having breakout sessions on a weekly or on a monthly basis or a bi-monthly basis, so people can sit and talk, exchange these ideas, give you examples, walk you through if we have to. Yeah. They can somebody who's a specialist with that can walk you through that process when you're in your membership and marketing class for breakout.
Yep.
I have one other thing to share. I sing with what I call the old fart barbershoppers. Our average age is somewhere in the high 80s. The oldest is 95. We have a 92-year-old. We have several 80-year-olds. And we decided that we wanted to put learning material on Google Docs. Sounds pretty simple, right? This coming Wednesday, we are having a session with those that have portable devices to bring them to our practice. And we're going to spend an hour showing them how to get into Google Docs. So don't take any of this stuff for granted. And you may have to we might need to actually invite a clinician, the Harmony College Northwest, that just does a 2-hour thing on here's Facebook. Also, I highly recommend taking a look on the YouTube page. I think it's under Chapter Helps. Anyway, there's a Zoom meeting with Amy Rose, who talks about Facebook, particularly, and other social media. It's called Social Media 101, and it's a great video, and she does a fantastic job doing it.
Cool. Bill, did you have a comment since you come on camera? I wasn't sure. David, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say that this talk about the racetrack and things not being there, that just reminded me of a story I guess we've all heard, but I never heard of the Barbershop Harmony Society. So you're talking about inside and outside communications. Just the fact that Barbershop and the Barbershop Harmony Society exists is still way too secret. And so I don't know how to solve that, but just looking at the list of things that we brought here, people use Facebook, they're using, Slack, Discord. And I was like, there are so many channels now that it's just, and, like my daughter uses other stuff and she's, on all kinds of different social media, but it's like, how do we make this better known? It's still one of our core problems is that not only do we have the local communications problems and the people we know and the communities we know in the music communities, but how do we get out to other communities? And so it's like I'd love to see if we could come up with something to help that too. But I was very disappointed to find out that like in Portland, I live in Portland, and I didn't know that the Barbershop Harmony Society existed. And then once I did, I was like, I love this. And then I found out, yes, the International was held in Portland in 2012. I didn't hear about barbershop until 2013. And I was like, no, the one chance I could have had it in my backyard, and I didn't even know it existed. It was like, anyway.
The one thing, David, that we can fix on our end is our chapters. You cannot be cloistered in your rehearsal space expecting people to know you're there. You've got to get out in front of people. And like I say, Federal Way is one of the better known chapters. They're not the best singers by far, but they are the better known because they're out there 2 times a month, plus their rehearsals, but 2 times a month they're performing somewhere. And 90% of what they do is paid. So that performance is giving them visibility, and that's also a huge chunk of their annual budget is those sing outs. And they get the least they get is $50. The most they get that I'm aware of was $800 for a performance. And
Wow.
they still do 4 charity shows. So it's a very busy chapter. They were so excited. They sang a 65 at contest. They were most improved. I've never seen more jazz people in my life. I've also not seen more COVID than they had. They had 8 members out with COVID, but they're happy just to sing for people. And now they know they sing better than they thought they did. So they're going to get a boost in the arm, and it's all going to work out very good. But we have our chapters to take care of. I often ask the question, if the Barbershop Harmony Society failed today and the district fell apart, would I still have a chapter to sing with? The question is, yeah, you should have a chapter, but we need the district, so we got to keep the district going. And what happens in Nashville happens in Nashville. But we can take care of our own chapters and make ourselves more visible and let people know that barbershop exists.
Yep. And Greg already talked about new member orientation. Do you have a comment, somebody?
Oh, I was just going to say, I feel very good about the Portland, Oregon chapter in that regard. Is we've got a lot of things going on, and our visibility's gone up, and so I'm not too worried about that particular chapter. But certainly, there's a lot of people, and even in Portland, the Rose City Timberliners are a lot what you described, Greg. Is they sing, they don't sing super well, but they sing a lot, and they sing for money, and they have no budget problems, and I'm very impressed. But every chapter has to work out their own way.
I had the privilege of working with Yakima, and when I first met with Yakima on a Zoom call, there were 4 people there, 3 members and the director. That was the entire extent of their chapter. All I told them was find singers, and then as soon as you can do, they don't even need 4 parts. But as soon as you're confident enough, go out to the street and sing. And they've grown their chapter to 16. And they started this process February of this year. So that's pretty doggone good growth. But they did it the old-fashioned way, personal invitation, singing in front of people, and being extremely welcoming and embracing new folks joining them. And sometimes chapter members can sabotage the growth thing. So make sure that your chapter is all together. I was in a chapter where this Puyallup Valley Harmonizers, it no longer exists. Puyallup Valley Harmonizers was ashamed of how they sounded. We had 79 people visit us in a year, and 2 people joined. Because there were actually people saying, you don't want to be in this group. Like, go to Bellevue. You don't want to be here. So you got to make sure that everybody within the chapter is understanding the importance of growing the chapter. Everything gets better with more people.
Why would somebody be in a chapter and then say, don't be in this chapter?
That's like asking, why is there air, David? People do weird things. And the point that Greg just made is critical. You've got to get everybody on board. I mean, everybody. One person sitting back in there being grumpy is gonna tube the whole thing.
Yeah. And there's another aspect of, especially internal communications. How do you know the word's getting out? I had a couple thoughts on that. One is, maybe ask at rehearsals, hey, does anybody have any questions about whatever that message is you sent out, how, in whatever form, and see if you get any questions like, what are you even talking about? And or if you can kind of get the affirmation, everybody understand, that kind of thing, what's going on. And also you can go to Afterglow. I like to tease Bill that, you, as captain of the ship, needs to know, he knows that the slaves in the bottom of the ship know that it's leaking before anybody else. So Afterglow is a good place to go and get the pulse, so to speak, of what's going on in the chapter, because people might have a few drinks and they'll start talking about, oh, this guy's mad about that or whatever. You'll find out what's going on, and that's not so much about that's another communication thing you as leaders need to know. So that's a great way to find out. Or call people randomly in your chapter and say, hey, especially ones that haven't been there in a couple of rehearsals, just checking on, you're busy, you told me you wouldn't be there, but just kind of follow up with them. But that's,
you mean I have to listen at the Afterglow too?
Yes.
I want to share something. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know that not every conversation is a pleasant conversation, and some of the conversations that we need to have as leaders can be very uncomfortable or difficult to navigate, to make sure that you're getting the intention of the conversation across. Ian Hauka is the director of Bridgetown Sound. He's also baritone section leader for PDX Voices. He did the Harmony Platoon. If you guys were around at District, you would have seen him around. He was also the tenor of Argonauts. But his profession, his degree is in nonviolent communication, or another way to call it is compassionate communication. And he actually has gone into choruses and taught classes, an hour, 3 hours a weekend. He's spent time with boards, musical leadership, and of different choruses, just to help them learn how to communicate in a way that is both compassionate but still while being firm enough to be understood, and to open up maybe lines of communication that have been shut down. So if anybody has an issue that they're maybe a little nervous about broaching, or a communication breakdown within leadership or between leadership and the chorus, I would invite you to reach out to Ian, because he is an incredible resource. He's very affordable, and he's very willing to help out if he's got the time. So if you need his communication, you can definitely his information on how to communicate with him. You can reach out to me, or you can even go to the Argonauts web page and reach out to them through there, or Facebook. But yeah, he would be a great resource if you need any assistance in that way.
Yep.
Great.
On another aspect, I was in a chapter until COVID. During COVID, I was active on their Zoom meetings. Then they went back to live rehearsals, and for whatever reason, I felt really, really uncomfortable. They weren't social distancing. There was a bunch of stuff that was going on, and so I dropped away. And after a year, when no one had called to find out why I wasn't there, after a year of basically just being a lost member, I finally gave up. So what's wrong with that picture?
A lot's wrong with that picture.
Can you say follow through?
So could I respond to that?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm really sorry you had that experience. I know just what the first part of that feels like, because we had the same thing in our chapter and we had a big blow up about it. And I was so upset with the way I had been treated that I wrote an email to the board and with F-bombs in it. I was so ticked off. And they said, let's get together and talk. So we went to a park where we'd been gathering to sing. And we all just sat down, and the person that had ticked me off the most started off, when the president said, okay, does anybody have anything they want to say? And the person that really pissed me off the most started right off with, I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. And I screwed up. The way they treated me and the grace that they gave me from my stupid behavior bonded me to these guys like nothing else could have. Having gone through that and felt like a fool and been treated so well, I have so many positive things to say about the men in my chorus.
The thing that I was trying most to bring up is that verbal communication and non-communication says something. All it would have taken is a telephone call to say, what's going on? Are you okay? I would rather have them do that than ignore me.
Exactly. And they didn't ignore me. I was ready to just leave it. I'm glad I actually sent that email, because it told people that I was ticked, gave them something to respond to. But my tendency is to just run away and ignore it and deal with the consequences. I don't want that confrontation. I'm a much more like, I'm really surprised I didn't do what you did, Greg, and just walk away.
But it was the hardest thing I ever did, and I'm now a member of Frank Thorne, and that seems really odd, extremely odd. But until I get to a point where I can rejoin a chorus, at least I can stay in barbershop, and I can find some guys to sing with. So I have a quartet occasionally, and I've got 16 members of a group called Midday Melody Men, and they just asked me to take over leading it. So I got my hands full.
And it's interesting that the hardest thing for us as human beings in an organization, in some kind of group, is in maintaining our relationships. It's not dealing with people that are in our face. Those can be painful. That's not the hardest part of maintaining relationships. For me, the hardest part is reaching out to people that I haven't seen in a while, reaching out to people I haven't heard from, that I'm not singing with. That's a real challenge for me.
That's why we need to go back to the old thing of the sunshine chairman. Someone who goes out and says, how are you doing? Or sending out cards or doing whatever.
Yep. John, you had a comment or question?
John.
Yes, what I actually heard from Greg's anecdote was there was an expectation. And as a member, he had an expectation for a set of behaviors that he needed. And the real message there was, did the chapter understand what that expectation was? And we're a small chapter on the coast of Oregon, and we've all the same kinds of growth and retention and performance and administrative issues that everybody else does, and I'm not even on board. But if leadership in the chapter understands what the expectations are or the needs of the members for communication in a broad sense, or maybe even just on a personal level, then those kinds of acknowledgments can be addressed either within a program. Like, we haven't seen somebody who does the outreach this week. Why did Steve miss 2 rehearsals instead of just the occasional one? What's going on with so-and-so, because they seem to be really grumpy all the time with the director, etc. So, knowing what the expectations are for each, for the members, allows you to have that awareness. And then if there are some programs within the chapter or motivations within the chapter, then some of those kinds of experiences can perhaps be avoided.
One of the things that we included in the new member orientation, which is located online, and you can download it, was actually the idea of setting a memorandum of understanding, an MOU, which says, as a member of our chapter, you can expect the chapter to do this. And so the chapter will do this, and in exchange, you will do this. You put in little things like, you'll learn your music at home. What a concept. But actually set up an agreement. And I had the opportunity to sing with Rainier Valley Harmonizers the year it folded. I've gone through a lot of folded chapters, but
don't come to the Oregon coast.
I'm not inviting.
I could bring up the piece of paper and say, see, you guys said you were going to do this and you didn't do it. By the same token, they could go, Greg, you promised to learn your music at home and you didn't do that. So, but it does open up kind of an understanding between the members and the administration portion of it, particularly with the director. So that's another idea.
That's great input, John. I appreciate that. A great insight. And again, Bill started off talking about communications with the in the president's thing. I know we have a few minutes. So I was worried I wasn't going to be able to stretch this out for an hour. So thank you guys for sharing and being involved, because I'm very much a roundtable kind of guy. And to Bill's point too, I was going to talk about this. It's a volunteer organization. It's really, but again, I guess it in a great setting expectations is still necessary. They're not showing, even if you go to volunteer at the food bank or something, they have expectations of you. They want you to do this and that, and maybe wear gloves, and maybe, check dates on food, whatever that happens to be, wherever you're involved in. If you go to church, there's expectations. If you go to whatever, your bowling league, they have expectations. So volunteer organizations need to be organized. And I think setting expectations is a huge part of that. So I'm really glad that comment came out. Thanks, John, for that. So I don't have anything else again to say. There's no silver bullet. There's no cookie cutter. And as we just talked about in this hour, is personal involvement. And don't expect an East Coast solution or even a district solution, because the I-5 corridor is not Boise, Idaho. It's not Alaska. You need to think about or Central Oregon there on the coast. You got to think about what makes sense for your people. If you're going to advertise on radio, or TV, which one is the most listened to or watched, and things like that. And it's really just have to be creative and highlight again, be out there singing. That's going to solve a lot of your challenges you're trying, because then people are going to know you, singers are going to hear you, going to want to get involved. And so that's all I have, Katie, unless there's any other final comments from somebody about communications. And welcome Greg as the incoming communications director. Thank you, Greg. And I hope we survive this year just fine. You guys made me look good, because I certainly can't take credit for the work you guys did. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little tidbit onto the contracts or the memorandums of understanding kind of ideas. Certainly in the chapter or chapters that I've been involved with, there are people who are extremely resistant to those things and find them downright insulting. That you're saying, hey, you think I'm not going to do anything that's like rational? You're just insulting my intelligence, and so we've seen a lot of pushback in the past, but it's all a very touchy thing. And like everybody says, is the barbershop is local, like Bill just put out. And that is so true, because you one prescription is not going to fix every chapter's problem. So I found that it's just amazing how the sensitivities can be very, very different about things like that.
Yeah, everybody's got to find their own way to do their own thing. And what works for one may not work for another. But if you don't even have the ideas to share, you can't accept or reject it because you haven't heard it. And I still think we need to work side to side, like I said this morning. We need to work. It's not my chapter against your chapter. It's our chapters to increase barbershop.
And Katie, I do want to highlight one more thing, and then I'll shut up, I promise. Is that thanks Bill, for bringing on Bob Cox, because I think we're going to see some great chapter support in things like communicating and things, and who knows where it's going to lead. So be involved, and I'm looking forward to the chapter support in the future. So.
Well, remember I told you in the president's thing early this morning that no one person knows it all. That's why I brought Bob on. He does know it all.
No, he doesn't.
He's just old enough to remember it.
He's learning from you guys just as I hope you can learn from me. So.
Well, now I wonder why I was invited.
Yeah.
That's not what you said the last time I ran into you, Bob.
Thanks. Appreciate that, Jerry. Love you, man.
Well, I think that Scott Harwood's note here in the chat speaks to a lot of what we've been talking about, specifically the last hour in communications. But he says, in order to achieve great vocal harmony, we must have interpersonal harmony. Starting to sound to me from this conversation, we need deeper connections than just singing and announcements. And I think that hits the nail on the head. I know that's one thing that our chapter places, I want to say, above all others, is the fact that our interpersonal connections are strong and that they are healthy, because that's where everything is built on. You can see someone's face and you can see tension in someone's face, and that crosses into musical expression as well. We're not all that great of actors to hide our internal frustrations when we get on stage. And so, whether it is in a large competition type setting or a small, intimate community affair, the interplay between the singers on the stage within your ensemble is just as important, in my perspective, as the sound that's coming out of your mouths. So I think communications, not only within the group on what event is coming up or what have you, but also to celebrate the members of your ensembles with that sunshine share, birthdays, anniversaries, reaching out to someone if they're going through a hard time, celebrating the little wins and the big wins is just so important. And to find the ways that your individual ensemble best receives that celebration is, I think, equally as important as the fact that you're celebrating it at all. So we're going into kind of our big group Q&A. So anybody that maybe wants some more information about their particular topic, or just wants some general information about any of the topics or outside of the topic. We have a lot of, not just with the panel that we've had today, but even with the people who have been on our calls, we have a wealth of information. So there may only be 19 of us on this call at this time. There may be some that join us as kind of the hour that I've allocated for the Q&A progresses. But at this time, I would just say open forum. If anybody would like to add something, ask a question, get some clarification, we're here. Let's go. Pipe up, raise a hand, or interrupt me.
I have a comment.
Okay.
When we had our youth festival recently, the Argonauts was our teaching quartet, as well as Drew was one of the clinicians. And I made the comment at our afterglow that I used Bill Hickman's name because I was speaking for him, and I said the incoming chapter president really likes to see Evergreen quartets supporting Evergreen chapters, and I think we all do. And I think we as a chapter learned from that, because we've, I think, grown closer to Evergreen by doing that. And also with our new director, it's good for him to have relationships with other people, especially in the I-5 corridor, because we're kind of out here in the hinterland. So it's important for all the chapters, not just Boise, but it's important to be involved with supporting other chapters. And we plan to continue to do things like that in the future as much as we can. We learned something from that, and it was really good for our director. It is really good as a chapter to be involved, and we cheered on Argonauts the loudest in other Cortez just because we had that fresh relationship with them. So that's just a comment. And so look to the district, to Bob Cox, to the events and for ideas of people who are qualified to help you with things. Because we're not going to get a lot of solutions from outside of the district, and a lot of things are expensive to bring in from out of the district too. So
the other takeaway for me is there's nothing new under the sun. If you as a president are faced with a problem, somebody's dealt with it, believe me. And all we have to do is tap the right person to find it. Just as an example, I got an email from Kalen from Star. When I put out the IRS letter of determination, it didn't include Star, Idaho, because C90 was not part of that. So I sent off for a copy of a new list from BHS, and that's in their their hands right now.
Going to do a radical change of topic, or following Sid's comments about the youth festival. I have noted from the perspective of the Bud Lebo Memorial Fund, of which I am currently a trustee, that we have 4 different groups that have done youth festivals over the last couple of years. And I think, Bob Cox, I think this would be a great thing to get those groups that are doing those kind of festivals together to collect best practices, and to sort of put those out there for other chapters that might be interested in trying to either join with those chapters to do youth festivals or to do their own in their own locales.
I think the future is local youth festivals rather than try to do one big one. Boise is the big boy in the block. But you've been doing it for a long time, and you've built it up over time to where it's widely understood in the local area and supported. For those of us who are getting them off the ground in our areas, it's a little bit more difficult, but it's coming along.
Yeah, and always feel free to come and hang out at our youth festivals, or again, Rich Lapp. It wasn't originally his idea, but he's the brains behind the operation. And there's a whole team that supports it, of course, but I know he advised Bill on theirs, and I know he gave you great advice, and he's more than willing to share the things we've learned and we do an after action every time, and so we hopefully we always improve and not make the same mistakes. So.
And again, it's the aspect of communications. It's being able to go to people like Sid over in Boise or Bill up in Seattle area, and to just ask the questions. Hey, we're thinking of doing this. What were your challenges? What did you do successfully? What would you improve on if we decided to do it, or would you be willing to help us do it? There are people, as I've said throughout this whole day, is that there are people in each one of these breakout rooms that we've had today that have answers, that have programs that have been successful, or challenges that they faced, that they overcame. And all we have to do is just start talking to each other. This sitting in our own little world in Salem, Oregon, or Tualatin, or Boise, Idaho, or Anchorage, Alaska, and just trying to do these things by ourselves, it's just why? I don't understand. It's
a circular firing squad.
That's it.
I do want to offer again to those that are here that for 2024, this is actually Sid's idea, but I'm going to take it and run with it. We would like to do highlights of your directors. So we're looking for about 150 words of a bio to highlight your director, and you can send it to me. And I just put my email in the chat. It's marketing@evgdistrict.com. And you can start sending those to me now, and we will collect them, and then we will set them out in the green sheet and other publications a little bit over time in 2024. So I know a lot of you are really proud of your directors, as you should be. if they agree to the recognition, we would love to publish their story, and you guys are the ones that could be the catalyst that makes that happen. So, and like I said, we don't need much. 150, 200 words will be plenty.
This refers back to our websites that we go around and visit, and we try to find out information on each of your chapters. As leaders, a listing of your chorus or your chapter leaders would be nice to have on those locations. But more importantly, update the information that's on there. I got one chapter that's just to the north of us. I won't mention any names, Canby, Oregon, that they haven't updated their website in like 20 years. And you go on to find out where they rehearse, and yeah, that's where they rehearsed 15 years ago. So do yourselves a favor when you're out marketing yourselves. Give the information about your website. Make sure that's updated. Make sure that the information is correct. Make sure that it's attractive and has an appeal to it, and that that they can get some answers to about your chapter and your organization. It just burns me up when I do that.
When I first started, I was looking for leaders for workshops, and so I was going to websites all over the place, and I found one that this was 2022, and I found one website that was last updated in 2013, and so I assumed the chapter was dead. It wasn't dead, but it was dead online.
I'm gonna mute myself.
Maybe it's beating a dead horse too much, but I feel like there's a parallel there when you can't get people to update their membership center stuff. It's like, please, it's not that hard. And we can get the chapter secretaries to do it. But, it's like all this dead information online really does hurt us.
70%.
Yeah, there's Scott. Not just Karen, but Scott. Hey, Scott.
That's my base. Nice, Scott.
That's your award-winning base.
That's my Scott. Oh, now you're unmuted. Now you can share.
No, I was just I've been listening for a while, listening to the conversation. There's so much good stuff here, but coming from a marketing and advertising background that I came from, the thing about the websites being stale and items being stale, that's just death. It's death. I mean, you understanding that creating the website or creating the Facebook page or creating the TikTok or whatever it is, that's the start. That is merely turning the key to the car. You still got to drive it. And so when you do that, have a plan, know who's the point person, know who's got the logins, know who's going to do that, because over time, I think, and not to throw shade at Canby, because we sang on their show, but yeah, that's what happens, is that over time somebody says, well, who has the login? Oh, I don't know. That was Joe. Well, where's Joe? Well, Joe left 5 years ago. Well, crap. Now what are we going to do? I mean, we've got that even in our chapter where sometimes we don't know which login, who's got what. And so I would encourage all of you, make sure that knowledge is published, it is in a safe place, and you've got your point people as you turn the key to the car. That's all I have to say for today.
What would you say of new content for let's take Facebook, because most everybody has a Facebook page. Adding new content, how often and how and how much?
So there's actually two different approaches to it, and it depends on what your goal is with social media. The simple goal of information, there's no real yes or no. It's simply when you put stuff up, just make sure it's current, make sure it's relevant. Is your rehearsal hall your current rehearsal hall? When's your annual show? Things like that. If you're trying to create a social media presence, and I'm sure all of you have seen our quartets, you've seen, various chapters from across the country, and you can tell they're creating a presence. And so some of them are as intense as daily. A lot of them are multiple times a week, but the very least once a week of creative content that's going to drive viewers to their TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, yada, yada, yada. I will tell you right now, that is an intense line of work. We've drafted my daughter into helping us with TikTok because one, she's young and she understands what TikTok is. And two, because her boyfriend is actually a TikTok person and does content. So our goal now is that we're going to start creating a lot of content. But here again, that poses two things. One, we're going to have to put it on somebody to post it. And then two, and this is the tough one, then we actually have to create the content. And so that means getting chorus members involved. That means making skits up, making things up that you're going to put online. And that can be a lot of work as well. Again, if it's an informational website, just keep it up to date. But, when you, and I saw Katie's eyes go super wide when you make that choice of, trying to become a social media point of information or an influencer, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
I usually recommend to chapters that don't take on more social media than you can keep updated. So
that is a fair point.
If all you can do is Facebook, then do Facebook really well and get all of your members to invite people to the website and do that, because I was doing website, Facebook, and one other, I can't remember what it was. And somebody came to me and said, should we add X, which is no longer, what was it? Twitter. Should we add Twitter?
X, whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, said, should we add Twitter? And I said, yeah, that's absolutely great. When are you going to set it up, and how often are you going to contribute to it? And I never heard anybody ask to go on Twitter again.
And that's so true, because once you realize how big that pie is, you want to sit down and eat. It becomes a daunting task. However, I would also say on the positive side of that, it is as much work or as little work, but at least having that presence, and I think Greg makes a great point of making sure that it's up to date and making sure that things are happening. The other thing I would say along the previous conversation about writing stuff down and having processes in that is define the process. Okay, we're going to go on Twitter and we're going to go ahead and we're going to post 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and put it in writing somewhere. And yeah, you may not be able to hold up to the standard, but at least decide that that's the process. Otherwise, if you don't set it, you don't start it, you're never going to get there, I promise.
And if you don't write it down, it doesn't happen.
If it's not written down, it doesn't exist. That's contract talk from a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found that it's even in the most basic sense of it is hard to keep everything updated because you almost forget how many channels you have. And so like you say, you cancel a rehearsal. It's like, oops, forgot the website. Or I've seen a lot of that happening, and it's just a lot. But I think everybody's right. Is we just try and got to do the ones we do them well.
A lot of chapters set up Facebook for members only and think that that's advertising outside of their group. So that can be a catch right there. If you just set up a members only, I'm never going to see it unless you allow me to be a member.
Funny about that. Well, I don't know about you guys, but it's been a long day and my brain's about full. I think it may have that much left in there.
I'm getting ready for football.
Football, okay, yeah. Who are you playing, I wonder?
We can hang out until 4, but we also don't have to. So if the conversation, if the conversation's chilled out, we kind of feel like we have all the questions answered that we feel like we need answered today, then I mean, we can all pack up and watch some football early too.
Before we wrap it up, on behalf of the district board, Katie, thank you very much for organizing this. It was a labor. I know you had a lot going on in your life, and I really appreciate what you did. This has been the set. We had, well, I think when you pull the things up, we had participants from over 20 chapters.
Yep. Yeah, we had a lot
I've
of
asked
really
for a
great chapter
final.
representation.
I've asked Judy to send out a final attendee list because we have a few walk-ups, if we will,
Yeah.
log-ons. Yeah.
Yeah, and all of the material that was covered today, once Bill gets his PowerPoint presentation to Judy,
It's
all
already
of
there.
the information, oh, perfect. Then
Yeah.
all that information is going to be on the website, so it's
Yep.
already there.
Yep.
So if you missed one of the slides or want to take a peek at them again, or specifically the BHS training manuals for the big three
Yep.
positions, I think are some ride or die moments. Like you've got to just look through those, take a
Yeah.
half an hour and write some notes, make some notations about stuff. And then I honestly think, Bill, that every leader should take a look at your PowerPoint presentation
Yep.
because the methods of being a leader, I think you covered for the president, but I also think that a lot of those methods are really important for all of our key leaders to keep in mind.
I'll talk to Glenn about doing that leadership again, that leadership presentation at Harmony College Northwest again. I did it a few years ago.
Is this going to be posted online? Can we, or at least the link for a little while?
Yeah, so as soon as when we end the call, it's going to save the recording because I've been recording the whole thing. I'm going to get that link over to Judy, and then somehow it'll be split up because I don't think anybody wants to watch 5 hours. So we can split it up into the chunks. And I'll either do that on my end or Judy's end, but we'll get that posted to the website here in the next couple weeks so that people can touch back on stuff that we talked about.
If you don't do it and you leave it to Judy, I'll be doing it. So that's what I was trying to find out if I had to.
Yeah, I've got it all recorded on my end. So as soon as the call ends, it needs to buffer that down and get it saved and everything. That can take a little bit since it is such a long recording, but we will get that over to the powers that be.
And just those last minute reminders is that I sometimes go, oh, when I'm in a Zoom meeting, if you want to save the chat, now's the best time when you've got the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Sid or Greg, do you guys want to save the chat just to have it? I don't know.
I just saved it, and Zoom doesn't give you the chat separate. So basically what you end up doing, and it didn't work, what you end up doing is I take the chat and then paste it into the comments. So it's kind of awkward, but that's the way they do it. But for some reason, it didn't save it for me.
Bob, are you going to have a new, like a special email address made up for your position?
Yeah, it is. It's chapter
there.
development at Evergreen District.
Yep,
Okay,
it's
perfect.
already out there.
Awesome.
All the just for the board members, all of you now have access to Member Center in your role. That has been done. The secretary who dropped off here, I think. Yeah, oh, here he is. He has done all that. So you all have access to. You can pull down district reports through Member Center, which will give you the basic information you need.
Actually, an amendment to that. So I set the effective date on all the new board members to January 1 to avoid any complications. So that would probably mean that their access is not available until January 1.
I stand correct. I sit corrected.
I got a note from Devin, so I got all mine that I needed.
I know you'd work back channel. Yeah, we know a few people there.
It's nice to know people.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
And
Again,
now
Katie,
you all
thanks.
know people too.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Again, Katie, thanks very much for all you do and all you've done. Look forward to working with you next year.
If
Be on the
anybody
district events team, let me know if you'd like to help at all in the district events. Save just in case. There it is. Boom. Right. Okay. Bye, friends.
Bye-bye.